Greetings, Flosstube. It is Monday, September 18th, 2017, 6:24 p.m. on the east coast of the U.S. It has been a while since I made my last Flosstube video, but I do have a lot of progress and some things to show you. I tend to kind of wait until I have some stuff to talk about, and I've been just crazy busy stitching the past few months. So let me just get down to it. I'll save the life talk for the end of the video in case you want to just listen to the stitchy goodness. First of all, my rooster won first place ribbon at the 3-county fair. Now I'm probably not going to be able to show this where there's not going to be a reflection, but this is going to go in my kitchen now. That is so strange how it gets that. There we go. Maybe you can see it if I hold it that way. But it turned out very good. My framers are amazing, do an excellent job. Love all my ladies at Hope and Feathers. Melissa helped me with this one. And I basically went in and said, I want something kind of rustic and fall looking, rustic, you know, something that kind of represents the farm area right around here in Western Mass. So the mat, you can't really tell probably, but it's kind of a greenish gray. It's the first time I've ever had anything framed with a circular mat, so I really like that. It's just kind of different. And the frame kind of has this kind of metallic green. It's not really metallic, but it has sort of a sheen to it. And I stitched it on Picture This Plus Ale and DMC 319. So it turned out well. This is going in my kitchen tonight after I finish making this video. You know, I always love the big reveal with my ladies when I go pick up my piece and the ladies show me the final piece. Because even, you know, when you're there working with them, and they're amazing artists, literally and figuratively, they're all pretty much graphic arts design majors, and they have a great eye for color that I have to admit I don't have personally. So I just, you know, even though you know what you've picked, you never really know what it's going to look like, and then you have the big reveal at the end, and it's very exciting. That's my favorite part of getting anything I make framed. So I got a little first place ribbon that's going to go in my journal. It was actually the 200th anniversary of the 3-county fair. And for those of you who don't know, there's a metric crap ton more counties out in Eastern Mass than out here. Out here, there's 4 counties. There's Berkshire County, which is the extreme western part of the state. And then there's Franklin, Hamden, and Hampshire County. Franklin County is Sunderland, a little bit east and west, north to the Vermont and New Hampshire borders. And then there's Hampshire County, which is Hadley, Belchertown, Amherst, a little bit east and west, down to about Chicopee. And then Hamden County is Chicopee, south to the Connecticut border, including Springfield, a little bit east and west. So those 3 counties are part of the fair. I really don't have any way of knowing about how much competition I faced because I didn't go to the fair. Fairs are just not really my thing. I mean, I love to go to see the animals and everything, but I don't like the rides. And fair food is that kind of stuff you eat it and then you can't eat for a week because of the guilt of eating the fried Twinkie or whatever. Now, I have been to the Big E once in 17 years, and that's because my husband gave me tickets to the Alabama concert in 2015, and I went with my best friend, and I did get a Maine baked potato because, you know, never met a potato I wouldn't eat. But yeah, I'm not really into the fair thing, so I didn't go. I don't know how much competition I actually had, but I've got my $5 check I still need to take. I mean, this was like, what, Labor Day weekend. I still haven't, you know, I'm not going to spend this all in one place. But it was funny because my husband, I had to drop it off at the fairgrounds on the 27th, which was the day after our first football game. And he worked all day on Sunday, and so we didn't really see each other that much that day. And when we had a chance to finally talk, he's like, so what do you get if you win in the fair? And I said, well, I'd get a ribbon and a $5 check, and he was like, $5? Are you kidding? The amount of time it took you to make that and the cost of the framing and everything. But, you know, once I explained that there's not an entry fee, there's no application fee, that kind of thing. You know, once I explained that to him, he understood, but he was like, you know, stitchers get gypped if that's what you get. And it's like, well, no, because it puts stitching out there in the public square and lets people know that there are still people that do this. Because a lot of times when I stitch in public, people are just so in awe of it, and they're like, oh, I didn't know people did that anymore. So I view it as a way of more letting people in the general public know that there are still people that do this and that it is still a very worthwhile hobby. So anyway, I'm really proud of that. It's going to go in my kitchen. I'm going to go up on the wall tonight. So there was that. Now, another little thing that I was just futzing around with, and I believe it was my last video. It was either my last one or the one before that. I showed the flag of stars, the Bent Creek flag of stars pattern. Well, it wasn't something I intended to get framed fancy or formal or anything. And so I was just playing around with some ideas, and I thought, well, maybe I can mount it on an art canvas. So yesterday I had time to kill after lunch, and I just went by Michael's because I needed a skein of thread, and I came back with a lot more stuff than I intended. But what I did with it, now I would change one thing about this, but this is what I did with it. I just mounted it. I cut it and mounted it on an art canvas, and then I'm just going to put a sawtooth hanger on it and hang it on my wall. What I would change, I just cut this out with scissors, and as you can see, I didn't really cut it all that straight. But what I would change is next time if I want to do something like this, I would get like a quilter's rotary cutter and a ruler so that I could cut it straight. So after I cut it, I used Dritz fray check around the edges. And then after that dried, I've got this stuff. It's called Fabric Fuse, and it's actually Quick Bond permanent adhesive. And I think it's supposed to be like if you want a cool patch on your jeans, but you don't sew or you don't want to applique it, you can just glue it, and you know that it's a permanent bonding glue that is flexible. Quick Bond permanent fabric adhesive. So I did some lines of it. I may need to add just a skosh now that I'm looking at it up top. But then you're supposed to let it dry for 4 to 6 hours. So all I did was I laid a piece of cardstock down over it, and then I weighted it down with a couple of books. And it seems to me like it's going to be a good way to, I may just add a little bit of glue on here just to make sure that it sticks. But you know, I mean, like I said, I'd get a rotary cutter next time so I could cut it straighter, but, you know, it wasn't something this was not a piece that I did that I intended to do anything fancy with, and I've still got the pattern if I ever wanted to do it again. So, you know, I mean, I think it turned out all right. I think I'm going to have to add a little bit of glue just to make sure that it stays, but, yeah, it was just a, you know, just a one-off that I did. So anyway, so there was that. Now, yesterday was a day I meant to get housework done, but I actually ended up in the ER Thursday night. More on that later. I'm fine, but with severe back pain. And then Saturday I had a massage that masseuse like to kill me, but I needed it because there was something wrong and I needed to loosen it all up. But yesterday I just wasn't feeling all that great, so I spent more time stitching than I meant to. I meant to get housework done, so I really need to clean the bathroom, but with my back bothering me, Bill was like, well, just promise me you won't overdo it, because of course he had to go to work. That's a whole long saga for later in the video, but I just was taking it easy, using the heating pad. And I finished my 7th project of the year, which is actually a pretty sad piece. I stitched this for my best friend's mother. She's a real sweet lady. And actually, I never met her before the wedding shower in May of 2016. but we bonded right away. Diane and I have been friends. I know you probably remember the story from the video I made where I showed the wedding gift that I made for Dan and Diane. But Diane worked for Bill years ago. She was one of his first student employee hires here at UMass, and we stayed close and stayed in touch after she graduated. And she and her husband live in New Hampshire, and she has so very sweetly made me the godmother to their little daughter. And her mother, it's so sad. I hate it when anything bad happens on your birthday. Her mother lost her partner of 20 years on her birthday last year. He passed away of a sudden heart attack on her birthday, which sucks. I mean, I can tell you that sucks because my dad, all the losses in our family have come right around his birthday. My mom's mother died 2 days after his birthday. His mother died 2 days before his birthday, and his dad died on his birthday in 2014. So I know how much that sucks. It's hard enough, and then you've got your birthday, and yeah. So I wanted to make a piece for Anne to commemorate Jim. You know, he was very special in her life. She and her husband divorced after the death of their middle child. When she was 10 years old, she died in a tragic accident, and I think shortly after she and Diane's dad divorced was when she met Jim, and they'd been together a long time. I think it was like 20 years, because this year was like the 25th anniversary of her sister's death. So, you know, and they do a funeral, like a memorial mass every year for it. So she'd been with him forever. And I know Diane thought of him like a second dad. I know he thought of Diane like a daughter, because he only had sons. He never had a daughter. So it was really tragic. So I stitched this piece. I'm not sure with the crappy lighting in here how well you can tell what color the fabric is, but it's a piece of, it's 32 count Stormy Gray from 123 Stitch. Beautiful fabric. I would totally buy another piece of it. And I stitched it with 3830, which is one of the myriad raspberry colors that DMC has. And this is a pattern I found on Etsy. It's by a pattern designer named Helena Kovalchuk, and it's called Red Hearts. And then on there I wrote in loving memory of James F. Muir Jr. So I'm going to get this framed and send it to her for her birthday. Now, I'm not going to post this on Stitch Mania or my Facebook page or Instagram for that matter until afterwards, because we follow each other, because we both follow Diane to get all the baby pictures and everything. And so then she followed me and I followed her. So I don't want her to spoil the surprise, but I thought this was a really sweet piece, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. And yes, those are knots in there. I need to perfect my technique, but whoever it was on September 10th on Stitch Mania who posted the link to the colonial knot tutorial on YouTube, you just basically gave me relief from a 25-year-old headache. I'm actually going to write a blog post about it, because there was a writing prompt I wrote about, you know, what is a skill you've recently acquired. And for me, it was learning how to do a colonial knot. I still have to perfect the technique to get it right, but at least I can do it. I have never been able to do a French knot, so let me just say that's clutch, people, because I would go out of my way. And it's funny because when I joined Stitch Mania, I had no idea how many people felt like I do about those blasted stupid fringe knots. And I felt like I found my tribe because we all try to avoid them. So basically I just learned colonial knots, and they are easier. For some reason it just clicks, but I just need to make sure I keep the thread taut. That's the only thing I need practice on, but for some reason it clicks in a way that French knots never could. And my mom was the one who taught me how to stitch, and she taught me a French knot. She can do beautiful French knots. I don't know why I couldn't. So speaking in that vein, I've been working on the Clouds Factory Christmas Story pattern for my father for his birthday, which is November 23rd, which is actually Thanksgiving Day this year. And I have to say, I love this one already. I've got the mom, the dad, the wonky Christmas tree that the dog destroys, and the leg lamp. and it's going to say you'll shoot your eye out. And if you notice, there is a knot. That was the very first colonial knot I ever made. Very happy with it. I mean, it was ridiculous how excited I got about these knots, people. I mean, really, it's a knot. You learn how to knot your shoelace when you learn how to tie your shoes. But I have to say, I was ridiculously happy about that. But I'm doing Clouds Factory's Christmas Story for my dad because that is his favorite Christmas movie. He is as bad about that movie as I am about White Christmas. Every year we watch White Christmas, me and Bill. Every year I cry at the end. You know, we have made that our Christmas tradition since we got our first DVD player in 2001. So, and my dad will just sit there and laugh like it's the first time he's ever watched the movie. So yeah, I mean, and that movie is probably 35 years old now, I think. It was the early 80s when it came out, so and maybe it's pushing 40, but oh yes, and my dad saw the sequel and hated it, but I can't believe they would try to sequelize it, but they basically made it where Ralphie was the adult and had the kids at Christmas, and some things you can't sequelize, folks. However, you can sequelize Neil Simon's Murder by Death, but I'll tell you about that later. That's a pretty funny movie. So, there's not a whole lot more I'm working on right now. I do have some Mill Hill patterns that I'm working on for ornaments, but I'll show you those when I have more stitched on them than I do. Like I said, I just got Anne's finished yesterday, so that's one down. I think what I'm going to do is actually, I know I showed this a while ago. I'm going to do a birth sampler with Jennifer Aikman-Smith, birth sampler for CJ, my goddaughter. And I showed this before, but I started it on a different piece of fabric, and I just didn't like. I was going to do it on purple because purple was the baby shower theme. It was purple and it was owls, but I couldn't find a decent owl pattern. So, and I love the Jill Aikman-Smith, Jennifer. Why am I calling her Jill? Lord, she's one of my favorite designers, and I can't call her by the right name. Jennifer Aikman-Smith. I love her dragons anyway, and I have to say, the grandma dragon knitting the baby blanket, she's my favorite. She's got the little glasses on her nose, and she's knitting the baby blanket. But I just didn't like the fabric. I was going to do it on purple, but I had a piece of purple Lugana. I believe it is the stellar color from Picture This Plus, if I remember correctly, and I just didn't. I didn't like the way it was looking on the fabric. Sometimes that just happens with me. So I went through my stash last night, and I actually, in my Silk Weaver stash, this is a piece called Intrigue, and I've got an opalescent version of it. And it's not going to show up well with my lighting, I don't think, but it's kind of a purplish, bluish, tealish. It's a very non-traditional color for a baby sampler, but I'm not somebody who gets all up about heteronormative stuff, but I have never ever been gender conforming when it comes to colors for babies, because I can't stand the color pink, really, honestly, I can't, which, you know, I mean, my mom got to laughing one time. She said, how can you say that? Your bedroom was pink when you were a kid, but it was pale pink, and you couldn't tell it was pink unless you looked at the ceiling that my dad left painted white, and even then it was very pale. But I just don't like in-your-face pink. I don't like fluorescent pinks, bright pink. I like more like mauves and raspberries and things like that, but like the color I used for Anne's piece. But I can't stand pink. I mean, who chose pink and blue? I wish I knew why that was a thing. So I don't usually go with the gender normative colors for babies anyway. I never have, really. And, you know, I mean, dragons need some sparkle, I think. So I'm going to start working on that one now. Like I said, I hadn't gotten that far into the other one, but I just didn't like the piece of fabric I was stitching it on. I mean, Stellar is a beautiful piece of fabric. It just wasn't really going to work for this one. So, so there's that. So let's see. I cannot make a video without mentioning this beautiful rack from the lovely Kay. she of the Battle Cow Adventures and the BYU football games, and the cute cat that loves paper bags more than life itself. If you haven't watched one of her videos, you should. She's a sweetheart. I got to meet her last year when we went to the BYU game, and she's sweet. She's exactly like she comes across on her videos. If you ever have a chance to meet her and make a pilgrimage to Shepherd's Bush, do it. Of course, you're not going to want to leave Shepherd's Bush, and you'll probably fall in love with Provo, Utah. I know I did. Very friendly, loving place. Very nice people there. But she and I have become good friends just from the meeting last year, and then just from watching each other's Flosstubes and talking on Facebook Messenger and stuff. Well, August 30th, I had one of those wonky kind of half-day, short-day things I have at work. My office's feeble attempt at flex time, but because we don't work 40-hour week, we kind of get a little bit screwed on having one day off every 2 weeks. But, you know, I mean, I slept down to work for 3 hours, came back, and when I got home, there was this padded envelope laying in front of my door. And I was thinking, well, I haven't ordered anything. I mean, I'm not spending money right now. You know, I couldn't figure out what it was, and I picked it up, and it had her return address on it. And I was like, well, what's Kay sending me, you know? So I opened it, and she racked me this beautiful project bag that she made. And I absolutely love it. Purple is my color. She and Danielle and I have that all in common, but I love the pansies. Of course, I think of her every time I see these beautiful flowers. You can't really tell with the crappy lighting in here, but it's got real pretty, like, silver threads in it outlining the flowers. Absolutely beautiful. So, of course, I grabbed my phone and I DM'd her at, I guess she was at work because it was 2 hours behind us, and it was like around 1 o'clock. So it must have been morning for her there. And, you know, let her know how much I appreciated it. And she said, well, I heard you mention in one of your videos that you didn't have a project bag, and I wanted to remedy that. Now, I think if she wanted to sell her project bags, she could, but it's just really pretty, and I love the trim here, and it's got a nice lining on the inside. So that was the day that I had kitted up my next project, which is going to be one of those that I stitch for patriotic holidays and things like that, one that's strictly for me. I tend to have, because over Labor Day weekend, not to digress from the main topic here, but you know me, I've got conversational ADD. I go off on like 50 million branches at once. But back over Labor Day weekend, Melanie, who runs the Soulful Stitching Facebook group, she said, why don't we just all do a rotational whip weekend and see what we can get done on the pieces we need to work on, because she is the one who came up with the concept of Year of Whips, where you don't start anything new, so she's really good about, you know, encouraging you to get stuff done, work on the pieces you've already got in progress. So the way it works is that I kind of divide my whips into two categories. I have my rotational whips, which are the ones like Anne's piece or my dad's piece or something, where it's stuff that I have a specific deadline in mind to make the piece by, so I focus on those. And then I have the other whips that they're mostly for me. Like I have the Fruit of the Month Club Frosted Pumpkin Stitchery. I've got the Old Glory sampler. I've got the Granny is No Square sampler. You know, the ones that I'm stitching for me, that it doesn't matter how long it takes me to get those done, that I just put aside in my other whips to be worked on whenever I feel like it. Basically, those whips are the ones I pull out when I'm tired of working on something that I'm working on a deadline for. So the piece I have stashed in this lovely bag, see, I can bring it back to the topic at hand. The piece that I have stashed in this lovely bag that Kay sent me is the Clouds Factory Epic US Presidents. Let's see here if I can, because the day before I got this bag, I had gone and bought all the thread that I was going to need, because of course, when you, even if you have as much floss stash as I do, you end up needing to buy half of it. So I started this on August 31st. And you can't really tell from but it's going to be all the presidents. And it's got Donald Trump on there too. But it's also got, if you didn't want to stitch him, I'm not going to turn this political, but if you decided you didn't want to stitch him, there's a little Statue of Liberty that you could stitch in his place. I can't show you because I've only got the pattern. There's no picture of the Statue of Liberty separate from the pattern, but it's gonna be big. So I am stitching it on another piece of Silk Weaver's fabric. This was another one I started and then the thread didn't work. I had a real pretty kind of pale blue piece. There was a Silk Weaver's piece, but the white didn't show up because there's a white border, there's bunting and a flag, and then the president's. And this is a piece of Silk Weaver's Opalescent in the Golden Honey colorway. And I chose it because I thought it looked like parchment. So while I'm thinking about it, happy Constitution Day, and I'm going to stitch on this later after I do a workout when I'm finished making this video. But I've got George Washington's powdered wig basically, so I'm going to stitch on him tonight to celebrate Constitution Day. But you can see it's going to have a bunting and a little border, and then the president's. What I'm going to try to do when I talk about this on my video, I'm going to try to find an obscure fact about each president that, you know, that is kind of uncommon knowledge about the president. My husband could have been a double major in mass comm and history in college, but for some reason he didn't pursue. I mean, he took so many history classes, he definitely could have minored and probably could have double majored, but he just didn't. And so I've been talking about the presidents a lot with him. I'm trying to think of who we talked about at Friendly's the other night. Who were we talking about? Oh, I guess we were engaged in the discussion of when did progressives become progressive? Was it FDR or Warren G. Harding? And we were having an interesting discussion about the history of how the political parties changed and swapped over from what they used to be and things like that. And I can't remember exactly which president we were talking about. I think it might have been John Adams. Now that I think about it, we may have been discussing John Adams. And I don't remember how we even got on the topic, but, you know, my husband is very knowledgeable about the obscure trivia. He reads a lot of history books. One of his favorite DVD sets from back in the day was when the History Channel did the documentary about the presidents. I think I gave him that one time for a birthday or something, and so he enjoys all of that. And so I'm gonna, you know, just try to introduce a random fact that, you know, like for George Washington, he's the only president we've ever had who served in a foreign army because he fought with the British in the French and Indian War. So, you know, it's interesting stuff like that. I am actually related to one of the presidents, but I will not tell you until I get to him. It'll be a while. Well, it won't be that long a while because one of the early presidents, well, actually that's not true because his grandson was president too. So one of the earlier ones and one of the ones in the middle. But I'll tell you all about my relative when I get to him. But I just love stuff like that. I'm finding myself doing patriotic stitching more lately. So that and my old glory sampler I'm going to stitch on the patriotic days. Speaking of, I did work on that one on 9/11. I didn't get a whole lot done on it, but this is going to be one of those pieces that it's probably going to be 5 or 6 years before I started it last summer, and it's probably going to be quite a while, but I love this piece. I'm stitching it on a piece of 32 count heroic, which was the called for fabric. So all I got done on 9/11 was I finished this blue field. Point to the right. See, my last couple of videos I filmed on my phone, and now I'm having to remember that it's the reverse when you film on your computer. But my phone has been a little foul little piece of crap for me today, so I knew I wasn't going to get a video made on my phone. I finished the blue field, stitched in the stars, and started the first red stripe. And now that I've counted out that first red stripe, it's three rows of red and 3 rows of white for each stripe. So now it's into what I call the mindless stitching part of this flag, because I can just sit and stitch the stripes. This piece is also, oh yeah, no, I think it was John Adams, because I think going to this piece, not to, say I'm like a little squirrel when I try to make these videos. I just have no straight linear thinking path. It's always, I get one thought in my head and then it goes into another. But yeah, it must have been John Adams, because we were talking about how he was the first president to live in the White House. But there's a quote on here that says, "I pray to heaven to bestow the best of blessings on this house and all that shall inhabit it. May none but honest and wise ever rule under this roof." Well, hate to tell John Adams that even back as far as him, oh, that's right, it was John Adams, because we were talking about the Alien and Sedition Act, because we were talking about that in regards to current political situations. It was John Adams. We were talking about at Friendlies, and Bill told me that, he's like, well, John Adams was the first president to live in the White House. And that quote is from a letter he wrote Abigail when she was still in Boston, kind of getting everything packed up to move to D.C. And sadly can't say that that's been the case over the course of our history, but, we've had far more wise asses than wise men in the White House on both parties. But, hey, we may be a flawed country, but we're still a good country. There isn't any such thing as a bad American. We may have different points of view, and we may come at things differently, and we may piss each other the hell off, but we're all good people. That's the way I look at it these days. So anyway, I stitched on that one on 9/11. I was trying to watch a documentary that I hadn't seen. I've seen, over the past few years, I've seen most of the documentaries on 9/11 that are out there, but this one was called 102 Days That Changed the World. Or 102 minutes, rather, 102 minutes that changed the world. And it was mostly like cell phone videos and things, amateur videos of the day, taken by people right there at Ground Zero. I really couldn't watch a lot of it. It was just too emotional, even after 16 years. But I have a friend at work who, after 9/11, she moved from Manhattan up here. She had family up here. She was from up here originally, and she was working in a law firm as a paralegal that was right across the street from the World Trade Center. And she'll talk to you about it, but you kind of have to ask her. She won't voluntarily talk about what she saw, but she did tell me one time that anything you saw on 9/11, anything you saw on TV that day, it was 100 times worse actually in person. She said she saw people jumping from the building. People were having heart attacks in the street because they were so panicked. People were puking, having panic attacks, freaking out. Nobody knew what was going on. Everybody was just losing it. That it was much worse to, anything that we could see, because of course the media censored all that. Anything that we could see was just 100 times worse. So I stitched on that, and I thought about her while I was doing that on 9/11. So that's really all the stitching that I've done lately. I really, I kind of caught up to myself when I finished the piece for Anne yesterday. So that's pretty much it. I just, I just enjoy doing my stitching. This is the time of year where I have a lot of time by myself, which I've never had a problem with. It's not, sometimes people say, well, aren't you lonely a lot? And it's like, well, no, because being alone doesn't mean you're lonely. And I'm a much more of an introvert than I come across in these videos. And I just like my quiet time at the end of the day. I've gotten into diffusing essential oils, so I come home, I mix up a little essential oil in my diffuser, sit, relax, turn the TV on, do some stitching, and before I know it, my husband's home, and it's fine. So that's pretty much it for the stitching. So if you're not into hearing me blather on about football and life stuff, then I will see you later. It's hard for me to believe it's already September 18th, but our football season has been in the toilet since the first game. We started a week earlier than everyone else except BYU. We lost to Hawaii by 3 points. Went to Coastal Carolina, lost to them by 10. Lost to ODU, which really ticked me off, because they cheated on us so bad last year, and I was really hoping we could stick it to them, but we're terrible right now. We're absolutely terrible, and they're calling for Coach Whipple to be fired. And if that happens, it'll kill me because we're so close to his family. Bill told me, I'm watching the career of the best boss I've ever had go down the drain, and it's absolutely not his fault. But, you know, you hear, if you follow sports, college football in particular, if you follow college athletics and college football, you hear all the cliches about the intangibles that kill a team. But cliches come from somewhere, right? A cliche is just something that's said so many times it gets annoying. But it's true. We had a very bad camp. Kids were showing up late to meetings. They were just being jerks. One of the early practices in camp I went out to photograph, there was a fight. Whip lost his stuff because a kid was chop blocking his own teammate. And for those of you who aren't aware, a chop block is a very bad thing to do. Chop block is where a defender will cut the legs out from under a receiver. And if you do that in a game, it's a major penalty. It's a 15-yard penalty. And, you know, first of all, it's dirty pool. You can break a kid's leg, ankle, foot, blow their knee out. You know, that's why it's a major penalty, because there's no need for it. It's only designed to try to injure someone. And also, to me, it means you're a piss poor tackle if you have to resort to a chop block. If you can't tackle a kid legitimately and you have to cut his legs out from under him and risk injuring him, then you're not that great at your job. So from the beginning, I knew there was going to be crap hitting the fan. But you can't teach kids passion for the game. You can't make kids care. You can't make them work together as a team. You can't make them focus. I mean, we got rolled last week by, oh my God, my brain shut down on me. Temple. Hello. It was on ESPNU, but we got rolled. And you know why? 2 touchdown passes in the end zone were dropped, and at least 2 field goals were missed. So that was 20 points right there we should have had. We should not have lost 21, 28, 29 to Temple. We should have had at least an additional 20 points. We should have put 40 up at least on Temple. But when your receiver stands in the end zone and the ball just whoop right through his hands, coaches can't coach that. That's mental toughness. That's focus. That's actually watching what you're supposed to be doing. But of course, Coach Whipple's taking all the crap because he's the head coach. And I mean, I heard it put one time that coaches must be the most crazy men on earth because they put their careers and their reputations and their paychecks on the line because of they put their careers in the hands of 18 to 22-year-old boys. Yeah. So I'm really pissed. I'm really pissed at the team. I haven't even been on social media much in the past couple of weeks. And actually, the athletic director asked Bill if I was okay. Now, the whole ER thing, well, Friday night was the Temple game. So the team was trying to leave Thursday. Well, I guess it was about Tuesday night that I started having a bad backache. And I never have a backache. Sadly, my sister and my mother have just terrible backs. They inherited the short end of the genetic stick with back problems. I have a bad neck and shoulder, but I don't have back issues. I mean, the only time my back really hurts is if I overdo it a little bit in yoga, or I haven't been to yoga for a while, and it's like my body, but my whole body hates me at that point. So I was concerned about it because it got bad enough I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't sit up straight. And it was kind of wrapped around my side a little bit, and I was like, well, this is not good. And I thought maybe I had a kidney infection because I did have a kidney infection years ago, and I remember it was that same kind of spot, very localized, very painful. And I think the problem was I made the mistake of going to the urgent care center. I probably should have made an appointment with my primary care physician because they might have approached it differently. But I had last Thursday was my little jinky day at work, so I went to the urgent care center, and I was describing my pain, and they were poking around at me and doing all this stuff. And the PA, who I believe is relatively new there, freaked out and said, well, this concerns me. This is not good. I'm going to send you to the ER to have a CAT scan to make sure you don't have appendicitis. Now, for 43 years of my life on this planet, I guess I assumed your appendix was on your left side. Don't ask me why I thought that. But anyway, so of course I freaked out, but I had to let Bill know. And at this point, he hadn't left for the team yet, but he basically told the coaches, look, Jenny's going to the ER. They think she might have appendicitis. And they were all like, go be with her. We'll figure out how to get you to Philly for tomorrow. And later, just go and be with her. And so then it was an all-day thing. I'm sitting in the ER with the girl who came in to get her nose cauterized for a nosebleed, and some old woman who's sitting there puking into a barf bag every 5 seconds. And I'm just like, okay, I'm in so much pain I can't sit up, and I have to sit here and deal with this. They didn't ask me for a urine specimen at the urgent care center, which is what I thought they would do. I honestly thought that would be their first thing, and then they'd say, okay, you don't have a kidney infection. You must have wrenched your back or something. So, but they asked me for one at the hospital after I already went to the bathroom. So I eventually was able to give them the specimen. There was nothing that showed in there in the kidney infection. They took blood work, nothing showed there. And they did the CAT scan, and they said they couldn't really see my appendix, but there was no inflammation in the area where it should be. And I'm like, well, I've never had an appendectomy now, folks, so I don't know. Maybe I don't know if you can be born without an appendix, but anyway, so all that drama, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Bill did get to the game. One of the strength coaches, it was so crazy. It's crazy how fate works out, folks, because the operations director wanted the strength coach to drive down to Philly with the rental car for him because he had to get back to Connecticut on Saturday for a family wedding. So Bill just went down with Clayton. It took him about 5 hours. They got there around like 2, and the pregame meal was at 3:30. So it all worked out. And then, of course, he had his spot on the plane on the way back. But the athletic director asked Bill, he said, well, has Jenny been okay? She's not tweeting much. Bill said, yeah, she's just been staying away because of all the, and then he was like, oh, I realized I couldn't say because of all the drama about Coach Whipple. So he couldn't say that to the boss who controls whether or not Coach Whipple gets to stay. And he said, Ryan just looked at him and said, oh, yeah, okay, I understand. But everybody to a T was worried about me. But, I've just been treating it conservatively with heat and, hot showers. And we did go for a massage on Saturday. I'm kind of big on, the older I get, the less I like to have to take a pill to deal with stuff. I won't take an Aleve unless my neck is so jacked up like I can't turn my head or something. Usually I just use heat and shower and, just stuff like that. So I'm a firm believer in massage therapy. And I wanted to get us massages anyway when Bill has the downtime, because his job, poor kid, he gets so stressed. I feel so awful for him. I couldn't do his job because I would smart mouth someone. But they basically have gone from treating him as if he is the team videographer, which he is, to, well, anything with a plug, Billy can fix it. No, he's not a computer tech. He's not a printer tech. His job is solely to film the team's practices, get those in the computer for the coaches to study, get the opponent film for everybody to study, and send film to our opponents for them to study us. That's all his job has ever entailed, all it ever will entail. And he's just been feeling really disrespected and just pissed off for a while. So I thought, well, let's get a massage. And I get a hot stone massage, which I don't know how any masseuse or masseur actually does a hot stone massage, because you have to have asbestos hands. When you go in, they've got it. It looks almost like they're in like not a pressure cooker, like a slow cooker or something with boiling water. And there's actually steam coming off the top of the thing. And it's these volcanic, like smooth volcanic stones. So what they first do when you go in for a hot stone massage is they cover you with a blanket, and then they put stones all across your back. And so when they massage you, they'll first massage you like a regular massage with massage oil, but then they actually massage you with the stones too. So I had told the guy who was doing my massage that I'd been having back trouble for whatever reason, and would he mind, concentrating on that area on my back? And he did, and I'm starting to feel better, but it was just so weird how that all came up. And I'm like, who goes to the ER for a backache? I mean, really? Unless, like my sister has gone to the ER for a backache, but that's where she throws her back out so bad that she can't even get up. Like if she passes out or something, then she can't even get up. I mean, that's the kind of people that go to the ER with back pain, not someone like me. Now, I'll admit I have a low pain threshold, and I'm a wuss when it comes to pain, I'll admit. But still, I couldn't even, I was so embarrassed. I was like, well, crap, okay, next time I get a backache, I'm not going to the doctor. Because when they said appendicitis, I looked at him and I said, wait a minute, I don't have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, no fever. How are you sure you think I've got appendicitis? And the guy was like, well, not everybody presents the same way. Some people might run a fever and have the belly pain. Some people might have the nausea and the fever and no pain. It just, it depends. And I mean, of course, the minute someone says appendicitis, you don't screw around with that. But I was just like, no. But I am starting to feel better. So I was kind of sore today, but I think it's just the weather. Hurricane Jose is supposed to be screwing with us a little bit here in the next day or two. But anyway, so let's see what else has been going on good. Not a whole lot. I'm still doing my feeder watch reports regularly on my blog. Our chipmunk's been going back crazy. I did learn about chipmunks that they don't hibernate. They sleep through the winter, so they have to have seed in their burrows so that they can get up every couple of weeks and eat. So he's been storing away as much seed as he can carry off at a time. Most of our birds have kind of left. We did have a blue jay that came out yesterday, but the blue jay is very skittish. And we also have some very aggressive mourning doves that will scare off other birds, so the doves were scaring the blue jay off. But he came, I put down squirrel food actually with peanuts and sunflower seeds, and he likes the peanuts. He likes the peanuts and the sunflower seeds, so sometimes he comes around. Like I said, we've had like 8, 9, 10 mourning doves at a time on the ground out around the feeder. And I don't know if they're horny or if they're just ticked off at each other, but they go after each other. It's kind of interesting to watch. So we actually put out a second feeder because I noticed over just the course of the summer that some of the birds we had were very skittish when they were in large groups. And I thought if I put up a feeder with perches on it, that might attract different birds. And it actually did. We had goldfinches for the first time in the past year and a half. We had male and female goldfinches, but I think they're starting to migrate out of here. So, but the squirrels destroyed the first one we put up because we put up a plastic one, and it had little seed portals and little perches on either side. I think it had like 6 perches, and they weren't used to having to fight for their food because the other feeder we have is just a dome with a little tray. So that one they could jump up on and swing back and forth and get the food. But darn if they weren't smart enough to figure out if they just chewed the other feeder apart, they could get to the seed. And they actually pulled like one of the seed portals almost all the way off. So I got a different one. I've got a wooden one, and it's shaped like an inverted T. So there's perches on either side, and then there's a little tray, and they get up in the tray. They're too big to get up in the tray, but they make it happen. Like the chipmunk can get in the tray and is the perfect size, and he'll just sit there shoveling through the food, knocking it all on the ground, which is the other birds like it. But so feeder watch has been fun. In November, I'm going to start doing a bird count for the Cornell Ornithology Lab. They do bird counts every once in a while. I think it's like from November to March. And my juncos should probably start coming back, probably in November. They're a type of sparrow, but they're like a winter type of sparrow. They're little. I mean, they're about the size of a house sparrow. And I think they can interbreed with the other species of sparrows, but the top of them is a beautiful, like bluey slate gray. And their bellies are kind of a peachy cream color. beautiful birds. Now, the thing that I noticed about them this past winter was they're definitely strictly ground feeders if they can get to the food. They will not get on the feeder unless there's enough snow that they can't dig through, because they'll kind of scratch with their feet, and if they can't get through the snow, then they'll actually get up on the feeder, but it has to be bad. They will not feed. They live kind of in low-lying bushes and everything, so they're definitely ground feeders. So it'll be interesting to see this winter if we have bad enough weather where they end up on the feeder, because that's like a last resort for them. I mean, at least it seemed that way last year. I'm not sure, but they would rather eat off the ground, and I think it's just because the ground probably affords them a little more protection. Our titmice have come back. Our chickadees are in full swing. The nuthatch, I haven't seen that much. But yeah, the titmice, they're watching them, and the chickadees is exhausting, because they'll come get a couple pieces of seed, fly away, go up in a tree to eat it, come back, get another couple. I mean, it takes them literally over an hour to eat, because they keep just coming in and swooping back up to the tree. And let's see, there aren't really any other. The blue jay was the only. He's not a newbie because he comes around every once in a while, but, and I mean, you know, when he's there, because he screeches, you know, they're quite loud, and he's a beautiful bird. He's just very skittish. He'll come around. He's kind of like my cardinal, my male cardinal. He'll come around when the other birds aren't there, just because he prefers his quiet time. So I'm glad I put out a second feeder. And it really doesn't take that much more seed than what I was using anyway. I mean, with Chet throwing it on the ground, it's taken more anyway. But if we just had the one feeder, he'd be doing that too. So, but, oh, and I don't remember if I mentioned my little sweet adopted cat in my last video. But back in May, we had a 5 a.m. fire alarm. And forgive me if I'm repeating this. I just don't remember if I told you this or not. And one of my new neighbors, who's a grad student at UMass, who lives upstairs from me, he had this cat on a leash, and it was like 5 a.m. and I'm shit for brains, pardon my French, before, say, 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, did I really just see what I think I saw? And of course the answer was yes, I saw a cat on a leash. But this little Siamese cat, he was a flame point Siamese, and he's polydactyl, meaning he had extra thumbs on his front paws. He was the sweetest cat. After I met him during that fire drill, or the fire alarm, rather, another cooking smoke thing. But, yeah, people around here just need to stop cooking. Call for takeout, folks. Even if it is 5 in the morning. But, and so about a week after that, Bill was fixing spaghetti, and our feeders are at ground level because we're in the basement, and they're right outside our kitchen window. And Bill looked up and said, "Hun, did you know there's a cat around the feeders?" So I went out to scare the cat off. And it was Thor, and I recognized him from the fire alarm thing. And he came running right up to me like I was his long-lost best buddy, started rubbing around me and all. And after that, we kind of bonded. And I told him, I said, "Look, Thor, as long as you leave my birds alone, we'll be fine." And, you know, sometimes he would be sitting outside the front door when I got home from work, and I'd let him in, and I'd play with him, love him up. Sometimes he gave me a heart attack on more than one occasion, because sometimes when I would come home from work, he'd be sitting on the first floor landing, and he'd shoot out the door right past me. Or likewise, when I was leaving in the morning to go to work, he'd have been out all night and shoot in the front door. He actually tried to get into my apartment a couple times. Almost did once. But he, for a Siamese, because I was always under the impression Siamese cats were kind of the aloof little snobs of the cat world. But he was the most sociable, sweet. I mean, like, he never met a stranger. And he was such a sweetheart. And for about 3 months, he was kind of like, it was like I was his adopted human. I mean, when he saw me and he was outside, he was my little white shadow following along behind me. To the point where when somebody was moving in August, they asked me, "Is he your cat?" And I was like, "Well, he thinks he is, but he's not." And the only reason I don't have cats is because I'm highly allergic. But that didn't stop me, because Thor was just the sweetest little. And so the last day I saw him was August 21st. I came home from work and he was laying on the landing on the first floor, in the first floor stairwell. And I went up. I had to go up to see him. And, you know, "Where's my favorite little puss, you know, all the little things I would say to him. And I had my keychain with me, and I just kind of played with him, and he was like pawing at it and everything. And I loved him up. Went on about my evening. And that was the last time I saw him. And it was the Friday before the Hawaii game, because Bill didn't have to be into work until like 11:30. So he stayed in, and he went and he did a workout in our apartment gym. And when he did, he saw Josh, Thor's owner, putting up missing posters. And he talked to Josh about it. And Josh said apparently on the 22nd, and I don't remember this, but I think it was one of those nights I fell asleep early on the couch. He said there was a thunderstorm and Thor got scared and ran off. And he's gone. He hasn't been back since. And it killed me because I'd never had a cat as a pet. Couldn't have one with my allergies if I wanted one, just because, you know, my sinuses would explode right through my skull. It'll look like some kind of, you know, Ridley Scott horror movie. But he was a sweetie, and he kind of took to me, and I was his new human. And I loved him, and I mean, it always brightened my day to see him. I would always talk to him just like he could perfectly understand me. He never messed with my birds. At first, he thought my birdseed bag was a cat food bag, but he learned very quickly that wasn't the case. You know, so he was such a sweetie. And, you know, I mean, I don't have pets because the lifestyle that when I live is not conducive. It would not be fair to a dog. It just wouldn't be fair. And we want a beagle, so that wouldn't be fair to the neighbors either. It's not just about you want a pet, so you get a pet. I mean, you've got to take into consideration a lot of things. So, you know, he was the closest thing I've ever had to a pet in this apartment. I mean, you know, like our neighbors one time next door had a pug named Mabel. She was cute. We had a dog upstairs from us named Odie. He was a 9-month-old black lab, and he always acted so excited to see me, but I always joked around. It was because usually when he did, I was coming in from the grocery store, and he smelled the hamburger in the grocery bag. But, you know, over the years, there have been animals coming and going. And there's a lot of dogs in our apartment complex that I met the cutest little Labradoodle, I think, named Orzo. Such a cute little puppy. I met him and his owner. She's at Smith College, and she lives in the building behind us. But Thor we bonded somehow. And I never thought I'd bond with a cat. And so it's like killing me thinking that he got killed. But where we live, there are things that happen. Depending on how far away he got. I mean, there have been coyote sightings. There have been bears. I mean, you know, in Sunderland where we live, there's a lot of open farmland. So there's not that many issues with wild animals, but you get off the beaten path just a little bit and you're in the woods. And there have been bear sightings and moose. There was a moose one time in somebody's pool. I remember it was when we first moved here. There was a picture on the front page of the newspaper of a moose that got trapped in somebody's pool in South Deerfield in the kiddie section, and there's this big moose standing in the pool looking like, how did this happen? And there are coyotes and stuff, so I just hope to God he didn't. What I'm hoping happened is that he lost his collar and that some family found him and just kept him. Because he would glom on to anybody who was going to feed him and love him up and tell him he was a sweet baby. And there was one time his owner asked me, did you notice earlier if he had his collar on? And I said, no, I didn't notice, but he had the bell on it, and I didn't hear the bell, so I don't think he did. So his collar had come off of him before, and his owner just got him a new collar and tag with the phone number. So I'm hoping that that's what happened, is that somebody found him and he didn't have a collar, and they just kept him. Because the other is just too upsetting to think about. But yeah, so that's been killing me lately. I just can't even. I miss him. It's been a month now, and I miss him. I miss that little booger, and I just hope he's okay. And yeah. So that's really all that's going on. I'm going on rambling for an hour here. So I better stop this video so that it'll actually upload sometime in the next week. Like I said, I hope to not be another 3 months before I have another video to share with you. But at any rate, I hope everybody is having a good month of September. And until the next time I see you, I wish you happy stitching and a happy life. Bye for now.